One day, you are going to die. And when that happens, your death will be meaningless to the universe. The universe will simply continue on its current trajectory without you. But what if that trajectory, one day, comes into conflict with your death? What happens if a deceased human becomes incompatible with the laws of science? The argument that is about to be presented is rather long. It's not an argument for religious people. And really, there is no point listening if you are religious. In fact, it's not an argument for most atheists or agnostics, or other non-believers either. This is only for those who strongly reject religion, as well as all other forms of supernatural belief. This is a story about possibly the greatest conspiracy throughout the universe. Some people believe that a God exists, and some people do not. A non-believer might refer to themselves as an atheist or an agnostic, or they might call themselves a secular humanist or a philosophical naturalist. For convenience, the word atheist will be used here to refer to all those who don't believe in a God, and the assumption will be made that you're one of those people. But the atheistic worldview is about more than just God. If you are an atheist, then it's probably safe to assume you don't believe in anything else supernatural either. For example, it's likely that you don't believe in angels, demons, and all the other supernatural figures throughout history, and safe to assume you don't believe that humans have souls, or that humans possess any type of magical ability. You don't believe in telekinesis or fortune-telling. You reject metaphysical systems of judgment, such as karma and reincarnation. You don't believe in heaven or hell, and so on and so forth. In short, you are not the sort of person to be convinced by the various supernatural interpretations provided by religion, pseudoscience, and folklore. Instead, you rely on hard evidence, your loyalties lie with scientific methods and explanations, your faith sits with the natural laws and forces that operate throughout the universe. And if you agree with the science, then you also agree that humans are the result of billions of years of natural evolution. In stark contrast to creationism, evolution is just a process of dumb luck. There are no special reasons for the existence of any particular species. There is no one species that is objectively more important than any other. No hand in the sky steering things in certain directions. No divine moral code. Depending on your perspective, the atheistic worldview may look a bit dull. Religions speak of gods who created the whole universe just for humans, whereas atheists talk about mutations and the power of natural selection, a meaningless competition where only the fittest survive. Unlike religion, science has nothing to say when it comes to the big questions in life. Why is there a universe instead of nothing at all? What's the point of human existence? If you seek answers to these types of questions, then you will need to look elsewhere, as this argument will not venture beyond the atheistic worldview. It will do nothing more than take a deep dive into that worldview. Only one question will be answered here, and that's the question of life after death. The story of life after death begins with a story about butterflies. Some species of butterflies have eye spots on their wings. You've probably seen them before. These eye spots look like the eyes of a much larger animal, and sometimes they can be incredibly detailed, even including a white glint of sunlight within the pupil of the eye. Eye spots evolved because they increase the fitness of the butterfly by potentially confusing its predators and allowing the butterfly a chance to escape predation. Now suppose for a moment that evolution had instead created butterflies that are more intelligent than they actually are. Suppose, for example, that there was a species of butterfly that you might describe as moderately intelligent, a species which has eye spots on its wings. Try to visualize what that butterfly might look like. There's no need to imagine anything too extreme. No need to violate the laws of biology. Intelligence loosely follows a brain-to-body mass ratio, and butterflies are only tiny animals. A butterfly wouldn't require a head much larger than the size of a pea in order to be moderately intelligent. And so imagine if such a species of butterfly existed, a moderately intelligent butterfly with eye spots on its wings. Now, further suppose that a slight genetic variation then occurred within one member of this moderately intelligent species, causing one butterfly to become slightly more intelligent than the other members of the species. Suppose that this one butterfly, unlike other members of its species, was intelligent enough to have detailed thoughts about itself, and one day the butterfly has a sudden realization. "Wow, look at me," the butterfly says. "I never realized how big and powerful my eyes are. I have such large eyes relative to the small size of my body. All the other types of animals I have seen only have tiny eyes relative to their body size. My big eyes and small body must mean I can see really well, while still being small enough to avoid drawing attention to myself. I must be really good at seeing predators coming long before they see me." In other words, this hypothetical butterfly is intelligent enough to have the above thought process, yet not intelligent enough to realize that the eye spots on its wings are not real eyes. Not only do the eye spots on its wings fool its predators, but now the eye spots are fooling the butterfly itself. As a result, this one butterfly now thinks that it has wonderful eyesight relative to its small body size. The butterfly thinks that it must be excellent at eluding its predators, given the fact that it can surely see them coming long before they can see it. Now imagine what might happen next in this hypothetical scenario. Here you have a butterfly with a newfound sense of confidence, and so one likely outcome might be that its behavior will become bolder and more adventurous than the other members of its species. Now suppose the butterfly does become more adventurous in its behavior, and suppose that it just so happens to be the case that the butterfly's predators are now minimal due to changes in the surrounding environment. Typically, this species of butterfly will stay close to the safety of thick foliage, whereas this one particular butterfly, with its newfound confidence, flies with reckless abandon across meadows and waterways, thinking itself more or less invisible to any type of predator. But then something interesting happens. The adventurous behavior of this butterfly allows it to locate a more favorable type of plant on which to lay its eggs. This then means that the butterfly's offspring are able to thrive on the nourishment of a particular plant that has always eluded all other members of the species. This one butterfly's false belief about itself and the resulting change in its behavior has therefore given the butterfly a competitive advantage. The butterfly has become slightly fitter within its environment. Now suppose that several thousand years pass by, thousands of generations of butterflies come and go, and the competitive advantage possessed by that one butterfly now means that its genes have passed down through the generations, and its descendants have outcompeted those butterflies with less adventurous natures, whose offspring were not able to benefit from the superior nourishment of a particular plant species. And now, after thousands of years, every butterfly in the species then has the belief that they have big and powerful eyes on their wings, and every butterfly is now more confident and more adventurous as a result. All members of the species are now able to locate the superior type of plant on which to lay their eggs. The species has become slightly fitter within its environment. But then something else happens. Suppose that one member of the species realizes that there is a serious logical flaw within the butterfly belief system. "How can I see my own eyes?" the butterfly says to itself. "It doesn't make any sense. If I can see my own eyes, then surely the eyes I'm looking at can't be the eyes I'm seeing with. The eyes on my wings must be fake." And so the realization soon spreads throughout the species, and soon all the butterflies in the species realize that evolution has provided each of them with a set of fake eyes. Their eyes are not big and powerful at all, and their real eyes must be the two tiny dots on the front of their heads. Having realized their error, you might think these butterflies would then revert back to being less confident about their eyesight and less adventurous in their behavior. But after thousands of years and countless generations, the adventurous behavior of this species of butterfly is now genetically hardwired into them. These butterflies can't help but feel confident as a result of the big and powerful eyes on their wings, which at the same time they now realize are not even real. This hypothetical turn of events might seem far-fetched, but none of the events in the story are inconsistent with how evolution works. There is even a real possibility that something similar has occurred on some other planet in the vastness of the universe. There is nothing to prevent evolution from producing butterflies that are themselves fooled by the eye spots on their wings. The only part of the story that really feels unrealistic is the idea that butterflies could have moderately intelligent brains capable of having beliefs about themselves. But then again, what's stopping insects from being intelligent? It just so happens that on planet Earth, humans are the intelligent ones and butterflies are not. But this then raises a curious question. Unlike butterflies, humans are very capable of having beliefs about themselves. Forget about the need to invent hypothetical scenarios. Forget hypothetical butterflies. The same evolutionary scenario can be applied directly to humans. The following question can be asked. Do humans have any beliefs about themselves that are now hardwired into them, and that they could not stop believing in, even if they knew those beliefs were false? Every normally functioning adult human possesses the belief that they are freely choosing their thoughts and actions. Humans believe in something called free will. When applied to the past, free will is the belief that you could have chosen to think and act differently to the way that you in fact did. When applied to the future, the power of free will means that there are multiple futures available to you at any given moment, and that the future you bring into reality hinges on the choices you freely make in the present. The world's two major religions teach that free will is something given to humans by a God. In the cases of Christianity and Islam, free will is the God-given power by which people can freely choose between right and wrong, and the means by which they then end up in heaven or hell, or somewhere in between. But free will presents a problem for the atheist. All particles throughout the universe follow laws. These are what are called the laws of science. Some people might call them the laws of nature or the laws of the universe. These laws cannot be changed by people. Atoms cannot do anything other than what the laws of science determine that they must do. This means that the layout of the universe at any given moment in time is caused by the layout of the universe at the previous moment in time, and the future layout is caused by the present layout. Each moment in time unfolds from the previous moment in a process of cause and effect, in accordance with the laws of science. There is no scientific evidence that humans have souls, no evidence that any component of a human is supernatural. Humans are made of atoms, and yet free will is the claim that humans have control over their thoughts and actions. So in order to have control over their thoughts and actions, a human must have control over at least some of the atoms inside their body, presumably the atoms inside their head. But even the atoms in a human brain follow the laws of science. The atoms in your brain don't belong to you. You can't take ownership of an atom and gain control over its behavior. Atoms, they're ancient, created literally billions of years ago, and for billions of years every atom throughout the universe has been abiding by the laws of science. If humans truly had free will, then it would be possible to insert an atom into the neural circuitry of a human brain, and straight away that atom would ignore the laws of science, would abandon the chain of cause and effect by which it had been abiding for billions of years, and would instead fall under the control of that person. In effect, the atom would be awaiting instructions from that person before it did anything. If free will were true, then the atoms inside your brain would be literally ignoring the laws of the universe, and instead adhering to the greater power that you possess. For the atheist to believe in free will, they must believe that they possess a power that can override the laws of science, a supernatural power. There is no scientific evidence that free will exists. Free will lies in the domain of supernatural thinking, and yet free will is something that characterizes what it means to be human. The sensation of choosing your thoughts and actions is a universal component of normal human psychology. Belief in free will looks like a candidate for the type of hardwired belief that the butterfly had in the previous section. Even if an atheist were to know that their power of free will was not real, it would not be possible for them to stop behaving as though it were a power that they truly possessed. In the earlier example of the butterfly, the very reason why all the butterflies in the species believed they had big and powerful eyes on their wings was because the belief itself had provided the species with a competitive advantage. The fitness of the species had increased as a result of that false belief. Those butterflies without the false belief have been outcompeted over time. Humans and their false belief in free will present an identical scenario. Having a belief in free will is highly advantageous. There is no requirement on evolution to provide animals with truthful characteristics, and sometimes mistruths can be beneficial to a species. The fake eyes on the wings of butterflies give certain species a greater ability to evade predators. The fake eyes therefore increase the animal's fitness to survive within its environment. Likewise, believing in free will increases the fitness of humans. For example, when faced with a problem that requires some sort of solution, most animals will simply act on instinct or pattern recognition, or follow the lead of others. Humans, on the other hand, behave very differently. Imagine the behavior of a human who didn't believe in free will. Such a person would lack the feeling that they were free to literally think up any type of solution to a problem. This is because belief in free will gives a person a sense in which they have endless options to freely choose from. All it requires is for a person to spend time thinking, and they will be able to search through those endless options. And the outcome is that a person who believes in free will then spend more time contemplating the many options freely available to them. This creates a positive feedback loop, given that the more time they spend contemplating their options, the more options they have available to them, and the more intelligent their behaviors subsequently become. The benefits of free will come from the belief itself, and whether or not free will actually exists is irrelevant. Belief in free will can be seen as a highly efficient mechanism for generating intellectual progress within a species, which of course coincides with increasing fitness. You could go as far as to say that a belief in free will provides a vastly improved form of evolution. An animal that believes in free will is set free from the slow rate of evolutionary progress that other species are confined to. Belief in free will gives an animal the belief that it is free to evaluate and improve upon its behavior, no longer waiting for some genetic mutation to occur, which only by chance improves its fitness to survive. Belief in free will enables the animal to take control of the situation and come up with ways to make itself fitter within its environment. Collectively, belief in free will also allows a species to form complex and largely harmonious societies, which in turn amplifies the rate of progress within a species even further. If all members of a society believe strongly in free will, then that society will agree that each individual is responsible for their own actions. For example, a scientist at the forefront of a particular field of medicine will be rewarded with social and financial success. This situation will motivate the scientist and cause other members of the society to want to emulate the scientist. But of course, none of this would make any sense at all if no one believed that scientists had free will. If scientists are not even choosing anything that they are doing, then what are they being rewarded for? The reward system would feel somewhat vacuous and devoid of rational explanation. And likewise, there would not be the same level of motivation or justification to punish a criminal who has not freely chosen to commit any crimes. Belief in free will is the perfect mechanism by which a society can strongly incentivize behaviors that are beneficial to the species, while also strongly disincentivizing those behaviors that are not. It might be argued that free will cannot be dismissed so quickly. The reality is that science is still in its infancy, and not until every law of science is understood can you rule out the possibility that the power of free will is real. But unless you want to start bringing a God into the story, in which case you are not an atheist, you are going to at least have to explain how humans, an evolved life form, actually evolved the power of free will in the first place. And this is a more difficult task than it might first appear. Suppose, for example, you have two people standing side by side. Both of them believe they have free will, but in reality only one of them also has the actual power of free will. If you were observing the behavior of these two people, how would you figure out which one actually had the power of free will and which one only had the illusion of it? Apply the same comparison to yourself. Suppose you are standing side by side with someone. How could you prove that you were the one with the power of free will and not just the illusion of it? Feeling free means feeling free, and you can't feel more free than perfectly free. This means that your inner psychology would feel the same as the person next to you, and your outward behavior would look the same too, no matter whether you had the power of free will or not. The problem in this situation is that it does not matter whether free will truly exists. All the effects, including all the advantages of free will, arise purely out of the belief itself. There is nothing extra gained from then having the actual power of free will, and this presents a problem in terms of how the actual power of free will could have evolved. Consider the following three evolutionary timelines. In the first possible scenario, humans firstly evolved the actual power of free will. However, the power of free will all by itself provides no advantage to the fitness of the species. A person who has the power of free will without believing in free will gains no advantage. Even if you possess the brain anatomy to gain control over the behavior of the atoms inside your head, without an increase in your fitness, there is no evolutionary mechanism by which that power would then spread throughout the entire species. The second option is that humans firstly evolved to believe in free will, while the actual power of free will came afterwards. However, this also presents a problem. How would the actual power of free will subsequently evolve from the belief the advantages of free will arise from the belief itself, whereas the fitness of a human's behavior and psychology are not increased by any type of additional freedom. You can't feel more free than perfectly free. This means there is no selective advantage in order to make a human's brain anatomy continue to evolve in complexity from the belief in free will to the actual ability to harness the power of free will. The third option is that humans evolve the power of free will because possessing the power of free will is the only means by which a person can feel free. In other words, in order to feel free and gain the advantages that come with the belief in free will, you must possess the actual power of free will. However, this scenario is not workable either. Humans do not need something to actually exist before they are able to feel its existence. That's not how human psychology operates. There are many people throughout history, for example, who have felt the presence of different gods and goddesses and other supernatural entities in their lives. If something had to truly exist in order for a human to feel it and then believe in it, then literally anything that a human can invent in their imagination must truly exist. If the atheist wants to hold on to free will as a power that truly exists, and that humans actually possess, then not only are they relying on an overhaul of mainstream science, but they are also going to have to rewrite the principles of natural evolution. It's not clear how the power of free will could even evolve, and there is simply no evolutionary need for humans to possess the power of free will even if it did exist. The identical advantages arise without the need for a human to have evolved some presently unknown power to override the known laws of science. Humans across all cultures and ethnicities develop a belief in free will from a young age. Belief in free will plays an important role in the way that human psychology operates and in the way that human societies function. Whether or not it's possible for an atheist to permanently stop believing in free will is not a relevant question. Rather, the atheist needs to have a particular type of relationship with their belief in free will, just as the Christian or the Muslim will point to a God as the origins of their free will. So the atheist should point a firm finger at evolution. Humans evolved in a haphazard manner over millions of years. It wasn't a pretty process. Humans literally came about through trial and error, the product of random mutations, and the only thing that mattered was whether or not those mutations resulted in an increase in fitness. Moral truth has nothing to do with it, and sometimes you end up like the butterfly, with false eyes situated on your wings, and at other times you get false beliefs situated in your head. But you are lucky. You belong to a species that is intelligent enough to recognize the types of problems that will sometimes arise as a result of being a naturally evolved life form. The atheist is quite capable of separating their everyday practical belief in free will from their disbelief in the theoretical concept of free will, and this allows the atheist to continue to reap the benefits of free will while also allowing the atheist to remove the supernatural lens through which humans have always been seeing the universe. A human develops their belief in free will from a young age, and it's through this lens that they will view the world for the rest of their life. From the moment they wake up till the moment they go to bed, a person feels as though they are choosing their thoughts and actions, and it's a peculiar situation to be in. Living a human life is a type of untrue experience. The human perspective is incorrect by default. There is no doubt that the illusion of free will played a role in the rapid rise of humanity, but at the same time, there is no evidence to suggest that a belief in free will is an essential requirement for the evolution of human-level intelligence. In fact, it's statistically likely that there is intelligent life somewhere throughout the universe whose evolutionary pathway never involved the illusion of free will. Try to imagine what the universe might look like to an intelligent creature that views the world without the lens of free will. For example, suppose that instead of being human, you're an alien species that simply never evolved a belief in free will. The concept of free will is as meaningless to you as the concepts of clairvoyance or homeopathy. Free will feels strongly pseudoscientific to you, and as a result, it's something that's impossible for someone like you to believe in. Now imagine how it might feel to be that alien, traveling through the universe in your alien spacecraft. And suppose you find yourself in a bit of a strange situation. Suppose you've been traveling in your spacecraft for a very long time. So long, in fact, that any memories of your home planet have long faded. No longer can you remember what your old life used to be like. You do not know why you are flying endlessly through the universe. Your alien body is augmented by technology, and you are connected to the power supply of the spacecraft. Surrounding you, within the cockpit of your spacecraft, are an array of buttons and instruments. As you fly through the universe, you have all the tools you need in order to conduct calculations and scientific analyses on the surrounding environment. And so this is your situation. You're in the cockpit of a spacecraft, sitting in the captain's chair. As you hurtle through the universe, your flight path has taken you to many galaxies throughout the universe. Most recently, you flew through the Andromeda galaxy, and the spiral arms of that galaxy are still visible behind you. But now that you've left Andromeda behind, you're back in intergalactic space, and it's an environment you're only too familiar with. And now, if you squint your eyes and look through the front cockpit windows, you can just make out another spiral galaxy. The instruments in the cockpit tell you that the next one is called the Milky Way galaxy. You feel okay in your spacecraft. You feel safe and secure. The spacecraft is all you know. But there is a big problem here, and that's the problem of time. Time and boredom. 10 whole hours pass by. Your equipment tells you you're traveling at a fast speed. And yet the galaxy behind you does not appear to be getting any smaller, and the Milky Way galaxy doesn't appear to be getting any closer. This is simply the story of your life. It's always been like this, and there's nothing you can do about it. When traveling through the universe, the distances are monumental. A universe with hundreds of billions of galaxies, and here you are, traveling between only 2 of those galaxies, and the distance is so great that you appear to be stationary, as if your spacecraft is simply hovering in the middle of nowhere. As the hours go by, you entertain yourself with the scientific instruments around you. It looks as though the spacecraft is traveling through empty space, but in reality it's not totally empty. You're passing through something called the intergalactic medium, a place of extremely low density. The spacecraft, on average, passes through only a few subatomic particles for every cubic meter of space. The equipment indicates what types of particles you're passing through and the ratio in which those particles are occurring, but the hours soon roll into days, and days turn into months. Occasionally there are small fluctuations in the composition of the surrounding space, small changes in the density and ratio of particles. But the information soon becomes repetitive and meaningless to you. Months turn into years. Your spacecraft tells you that if you continue traveling at the current speed, it will take several million years to reach the Milky Way galaxy. Decades turn into centuries. You have all the scientific evidence you need. You have become an expert in intergalactic particle physics. And one thing is absolutely true. No matter how far you travel, no matter where you go throughout the universe, you never encounter anything that is not scientifically explainable. The sensors on the outside of the spacecraft provide you with perfectly detailed scientific information. There are simply no supernatural portions of space, no special zones that defy scientific analysis. Every particle behaves in perfect accordance with the laws of science, no mystery in any of it. Millions of years traveling through a scientific universe. Inevitably, and only due to the laws of science, your spacecraft reaches the outer edges of the Milky Way galaxy. Your heavy eyelids open and you straighten up slightly in your seat. You are approaching your first star of the Milky Way. But the excitement doesn't come quickly. It takes years and years to approach the first star, and then it takes years and years to leave it behind. From a distance, the stars in the spirals of the Milky Way had looked densely packed. But this is far from true. The stars at the edge of the galaxy are separated by tens, sometimes hundreds of light years. You pass by one star, and then you spend decades waiting for the next. Thousands of years pass by. Only slowly do the stars start to get closer together. But still, it takes decades to get from one star to the next. And over, you see the same types of stars, hundreds if not thousands of stars, that fall into a small number of categories, each star being in some particular evolutionary stage of its lifespan. And once again your spacecraft runs out of new scientific facts to tell you. The spacecraft simply repeats what you already know, no doubt telling you the same things it told you back in the Andromeda galaxy. You're now flying through something called the interstellar medium, which is slightly different to the millions of years you spent flying through the intergalactic medium. Mostly, you pass by hydrogen and helium and other gases. Occasionally you encounter dust particles. The interstellar medium is much more dense than the intergalactic medium. In some places there are as many as 1 million molecules per cubic centimeter. But these are just useless figures. The dust and the gases. It's all invisible to the naked eye. The science means nothing to you as you stare through the cockpit windows and another 100,000 years pass by. You can barely keep your eyes open anymore. You appear to be heading toward the center of the Milky Way, and you know what lies there. You have endless scientific information at your disposal. At the very center of the galaxy is a supermassive black hole, something that will annihilate you and your spacecraft. No chance of survival. The monotony will come to an end. But something happens. You are startled by something you hear. Your heart rate changes for the first time in millions of years. The roaring noise coming from the engines lowers in pitch. Your spacecraft is slowing down. You watch as the years go by, as the spacecraft steadily drops in speed until eventually you're traveling at 1/50th of your original speed. The spacecraft makes another transition. This time the spacecraft departs the interstellar medium and breaches the planetary system of an approaching star. The scientific information changes slightly, and the instruments tell you that it's still frozen outside and you're still passing through clouds of gas and space dust, but now you occasionally pass by small lumps of rock and ice. At first these objects are invisible to you, but a few years later you begin to see them with your own eyes. The instruments give you a full breakdown on the mineral composition of each piece of rock and ice the spacecraft passes. Your spacecraft continues to slow down as the years go by. And the same thing happens. The information about the rock and the ice becomes repetitive and meaningless. The spacecraft comes to a complete stop at a small coastal town on the Mediterranean. It's a Saturday night in the height of summer. The sun is setting while the black silhouettes of humans move lazily in the water and the children play in the shallows. Up in the beach bars, young people have their first dates. And there too, the old lovers, smiling over their fading memories. The engines switch off, and you hear the sounds of the music and the laughter. The instruments in your spacecraft go crazy, spitting out endless amounts of scientific information, providing precise details about the behavior of the atoms around you. Everything here abides by the laws of science. There is nothing supernatural about this region of the universe. Every atom on planet Earth follows the laws of science, just like the atoms everywhere else you have so far been. There are no choices here. The pieces of the universe that are in love with one another are made of the same stuff that the rest of the universe is made of. These are atoms behaving how they must behave. That is to say, atoms simply behaving in accordance with the laws of science. The only difference between here and anywhere else you have been is that the conditions here are slightly different. This is how the universe looks in those regions where the conditions are just right for the atoms to behave in this particular way. And so they must behave in this way. Natural evolution has caused life to occur, and atoms that were born in stars billions of years ago now take the shape of feeling animals. There might be many boring places throughout the universe. Vast and sterile places where nothing happens. Freezing planets with barren landscapes. But even in the deadest corners of the universe, you will always find the very same laws that create the beach bars on Earth. The same laws that create children playing on the seashore. The same laws that create dance floors full of happy humans. You will not hear the sound of music while traveling through the universe. There are no giggling children playing in the dusty landscapes of barren planets. But the same laws sit in the shadows and hang in the air, waiting for the right conditions. Humans have a tendency to elevate their status in the universe. Take religion as an example. Christianity and Islam are the world's two most popular religions. Combined, these two religions represent the worldview of more than 50% of the population. Many people therefore believe that the entire universe was created just for humans. The Earth orbits a star, and there are billions of other stars in the Milky Way galaxy, and billions of other galaxies throughout the universe. Yet most people believe that the universe only exists so that humans can choose between right and wrong, so that a God can then relocate human souls to a particular type of afterlife. The atheist rejects this interpretation. The atheist sees no evidence for the existence of a God, no evidence that humans have souls. The atheist instead turns to science. And the science tells a story about the Big Bang, that life evolved via natural evolution, that humans grow from and are composed of the same stuff that surrounds them. At no point in the evolutionary development of a life form does it grow a component that is not a natural component of the universe. To be precise, the average adult is around 7 octillion atoms. Around 62% of those atoms are hydrogen, another 24% are oxygen, and 12% carbon. The hydrogen atoms that comprise a human are billions of years old, having formed not long after the Big Bang, with oxygen and carbon atoms, tracing their history back to the nuclear fission of ancient stars. This all sounds great in theory, but deep down, do atheists truly believe the creation story offered by science? Take, for example, the following statement. Humans are scientifically explainable animals that live inside a scientifically explainable universe. This statement appears to be correct. It appears to be consistent with a scientific worldview. Most atheists would probably endorse such a statement. But strictly speaking, the statement is not scientifically consistent. Any atheist who believes that humans live inside the universe has allowed an unscientific belief to creep into their worldview. They are guilty of elevating the status of humans to unjustifiably high heights. The atheist might not go as far as a religious person. Atheists don't typically believe that humans have souls, but most atheists are still guilty of giving a similar type of elevated status to humans. From a scientific point of view, nobody lives inside the universe. The statement that humans are scientifically explainable animals that live inside a scientifically explainable universe is incorrect. Rather, humans are small portions of the universe. It is incorrect to regard yourself as something distinct from the rest of the universe when you are, in fact, a naturally occurring portion of it. Now, this may appear like a rather trivial sort of error to pick up on. It may feel like a game of semantics is being played here, but the implications are important for the atheist. For one, if you're a small portion of the universe, it means that there is a small portion of the universe that is literally everything that is you. By whatever means you wish to define yourself, that thing which you are defining, it is a small portion of the universe. And you already know what the universe looks like. You have seen the sorts of images that telescopes produce. Seemingly endless galaxies, each with billions of stars. And you know where Earth is located. Earth is part of a spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy. Therefore, right now, as you are listening to this, there must be a portion of the Milky Way galaxy that is feeling identical to you, because that portion of the Milky Way galaxy is you. The fact that you feel the way that you feel is proof that portions of the universe are capable of having feelings, and the particular way that a portion of the universe feels will depend on how it has naturally evolved. For example, a portion of the universe will have feelings associated with touch, sight, taste, sound, and smell, if it has evolved those senses. If a life form must sleep, then occasionally a corresponding portion of the universe will feel tired and feel a desire to sleep. The same applies to the full range of mental states that the life form has evolved. This includes the feelings associated with the senses, desires, moods, opinions, goals, delusions, and so on. Do you have a warm childhood memory? If you do, then right now, there is a naturally occurring portion of the Milky Way galaxy that has a warm childhood memory. In any corner of the universe where the conditions are just right, the laws of science will cause portions of the universe to develop warm childhood memories. You are a small portion of the universe that has feelings, but no portion of the universe is controlled by supernatural powers. Every component of you behaves in accordance with the natural laws of the universe. This means that you are not choosing the way that your portion of the universe is feeling. Rather, the way that it feels to be you is determined by the laws that govern the universe, impacting upon a portion of the universe. Here is an example of the way that a human portion of the universe might feel. A 57-year-old woman goes to work 5 days a week. She works as a payroll officer for a company that imports commercial building supplies She has been in the same job for nearly 6 years. She has 2 children and 1 grandchild. On her weekends, she enjoys going out with friends. She usually has 4 weeks vacation a year, and she typically uses that time to travel abroad with family and friends. Now, pretend for a moment that you're having a conversation with this woman. You ask her a series of questions. Your goal here is to learn what her underlying motivations are for the type of life she is living. You want to understand the motivations behind the behavior of a particular portion of the universe. You ask her the following 6 questions. Question 1. Is being at work your favorite part of the week? Her response. No, she replies, working is definitely not my favorite part of the week. Question 2. Why then do you spend so much of your life working? Answer. Because I need to make money, and being a payroll officer suits my skill set. Question 3. But why do you need to make money? Answer. Because there are things that I can only obtain by spending money. Question 4. But why do you need those things? Her answer. Because those things give me the good quality of life that I want. Question 5. But why do you want a good quality of life? Because a good quality life makes me feel happy. Question 6. But why do you want to feel happy? Questions 1 to 5 can be easily answered. Underlying motives can be uncovered, even if those motives may vary somewhat from person to person. But look at question 6. There is something different about the last question. The question, why do you want to feel happy? This question is much harder to answer in a coherent way. What could be the woman's underlying motive for wanting to feel happy? It's not really possible to come up with an answer that is not circular. A person will want to feel happy, precisely because happiness would make them feel happy. Wanting happiness is a self-justifying pursuit, no explanation required, no underlying motive necessary. Anyone who knows what happiness is knows that it's not a stepping stone to something else. Happiness is the end goal. When the conditions are just right throughout a region of the universe, there are naturally occurring laws that will cause portions of the universe to develop feelings. If the conditions are just right, those feelings will be human-type feelings. And of course, the behavior of those feelings will themselves, just like everything else, be subject to the natural laws of the universe. Not only do those laws determine the types of feelings that can exist, but the laws of the universe also determine the behavior of feeling portions of the universe. In the case of humans, feelings generally occur on a spectrum between forms of unhappy feelings and forms of happy feelings. The unhappy types of feelings include pain, despair, discontent, apathy, loneliness, heartache, stress, anger, terror, hate, and so on. On the other end of the spectrum, the happy feelings include love, fulfillment, contentment, well-being, pleasure, excitement, elation, and so forth. The laws that determine the behavior of feeling portions of the universe dictate that unhappy feelings such as pain, despair, and discontent should be avoided, or if unavoidable, they should be minimized. Once again, there is no explanation for this that is not circular. If you know what unhappiness is, then there is no requirement for a person to explain why they would want to minimize their unhappiness. This is just the way that the laws of science make feeling portions of the universe behave. Likewise, the laws of the universe cause human-type feelings to naturally orientate toward the maximization of happiness. In the same way that the force of gravity pulls matter in a particular direction, so too is there a naturally occurring force that pulls feeling portions of the universe in the direction of happiness. It's easy to take this system for granted when it's the only system you have ever known. But the universe could be very different. It's not hard, for example, to imagine a universe governed by a different set of laws. In this alternate universe, there is no such thing as happiness. Happiness simply doesn't exist. In your current universe, the spectrum of feelings goes from very unhappy right up to very happy. But in an alternate universe, the spectrum could feasibly only go from very unhappy up to neutral. Unhappiness would still be something to be avoided, no justification needed, which would mean that feeling not unhappy or feeling neutral would likewise be a self-justifying pursuit, instead of a force that pushes feeling portions of the universe toward happiness. The same force might instead push feelings toward a state of non-unhappiness. Whenever a rocky, barren planet developed the right conditions, a lifeless landscape would naturally grow feelings of pain, despair, and discontent. The creatures in this alternate universe would have no choice but to be born, and they would be born into a universe whose natural laws do not create happiness. There is no music to enjoy. Food causes no pleasure. Success causes no fulfillment. Contentment is absent. And the evolutionary urge to reproduce is a process devoid of love. At most, the creatures of this alternate universe can only hope to ward off unhappiness. Their goal in life is to obtain a deep and stable sense of neutral feeling. The laws of science do not permit such a thing as happiness to ever exist, even for the most fortunate. But you can forget about alternate universes. No need to dwell on that subject any longer than necessary. That is not the universe that you are a part of. The laws in your universe are capable of converting small portions of rocky, barren planets into feelings of happiness. Atoms will come alive and begin to protect and care for one another. Love, excitement, well-being, these feelings will grow anywhere throughout the universe, where the conditions are right. Happiness is a naturally occurring phenomenon throughout the universe, and the behavior of portions of the universe with human-type feelings will naturally orientate toward maximizing happiness. And this raises an interesting question: just how happy can a portion of the universe actually get? It's clear that when a portion of the universe heads in the opposite direction, when it gets too unhappy, it can sometimes self-destruct. No portion of the universe can choose to suicide. Suicide is a type of behavior that comes into effect when a feeling portion of the universe feels too much unhappiness. Currently, there are around 800,000 suicides per year. This equates to around one suicide every 30 seconds. A suicide represents a naturally occurring switching off of feelings when the pursuit of happiness is failing in a serious way. But on the other hand, there is no known upper limit to happiness. Self-destruction does not coincide with strong forms of happiness. It's simply taken for granted that people suicide due to strong feelings of pain, despair, discontent, and so on. But rarely, if ever, do feeling portions of the universe suicide from strong feelings at the opposite end of the spectrum. This is simply how the laws of the universe work. A planet may look dry, dusty, and lifeless, but all it might take is the bombardment of a large icy asteroid, which then melts and floods a region of the planet, and the conditions then become just right for life. And eventually, pieces of that planet may begin to orientate toward happiness, and then possibly self-destruct if they fail and feel too much unhappiness. There are no portions of the universe that exist as a result of human choice. Look at your surroundings. Look at all those unnatural objects that humans have made. There are no human choices behind any of it. None of what you see around you has anything to do with free will. Everything around you contains atoms that are abiding by the natural, scientific laws of the universe. Free will is nothing more than a false belief that a particular species on Earth just so happened to evolve because it increased the species' fitness. Your belief in free will is meaningless to the atoms around you. What you see around you is what the universe naturally looks like when the conditions are right and when the universe is left to its own devices. But look at what your belief in free will does to you. Look at the way it warps your point of view. Belief in free will turns a human's perspective completely upside down. One of the evolutionary benefits of belief in free will is that it makes you feel that you can take credit for the results of your actions, and this makes it nearly impossible for a human to recognize that they are not dictating the course of human endeavor. Take space exploration as an example. In 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first two humans to walk on the moon. They spent around 30 minutes on the moon, taking photos, setting up scientific experiments, and collecting geological samples. Imagine what that landing site now looks like. Suppose that in some distant future you find yourself walking on the moon. You're walking in a random direction through the moonscape, going nowhere in particular. The air is still, and the ground is dusty and scattered with small rocks. And then you see footprints. Human footprints. You look around and realize that you've just stumbled upon the old lunar landing site. You see an American flag, and nearby you see the descent stage of the module that Armstrong and Aldrin left behind. The metallic object has 4 landing legs with various tanks for fuel and air. How would you feel standing there looking at the landing site? You are a human, which means there would be zero sense in which you would feel that the lunar module and the American flag are just as natural as the rocks and the dirt beneath your feet. If you got down onto one knee, and if you picked up the American flag in one hand, and then picked up a rock in the other hand, there would be no sense in which both items would feel equally natural to you. And this is what your belief in free will does so well. This is why believing in free will is so beneficial from an evolutionary point of view. Your belief in free will has such a powerful effect over your worldview that it's nearly impossible for you to accept that no human ever freely chose to fly to the moon. Nearly impossible to believe that the pieces of technology left behind are actually naturally occurring objects. That the whole event was simply the natural result of atoms behaving in accordance with the laws of science. It's an idea that feels preposterous to a human. But humans are natural components of the universe. Look at how humans came into existence. All the evidence you need is right there. Millions of years ago, people did not exist. Instead, some ancestral species existed. And then over time, that ancestral species evolved into another ancestral species. Bit by bit, evolutionary changes occurred, and eventually Homo sapiens appeared as new members of the animal kingdom, being vital components of the forest and savanna ecosystems in which they evolved, forming necessary components of the food chain, and so on. But at what moment in the evolutionary timeline did your human ancestors shift from being natural animals to unnatural animals? How does a piece of the natural environment evolve in such a way that it's no longer a natural part of that environment? That anything it touches becomes unnatural too. The only thing that makes humans and the objects they create seem unnatural to you are the beliefs that exist in your head. Beliefs that make you feel as though you are not controlled by the same laws that control the rest of the environment around you. That make you feel that you are special and somehow separate from the rest of the universe. When a human makes a piece of technology, that object is no more unnatural than a plant making a flower. No less natural than rain causing a stone to slowly weather into dirt. There is no phenomenon throughout the universe that is any less natural than any other phenomenon. Humans do not choose to build cities. Rather, if the conditions are right, then naturally occurring humans will cause cities to naturally occur. A city is no less natural than a rainforest. If you step back and you look at what's going on, then clearly humans are caught up in a natural process that occurs in those rare regions of the universe where the conditions are just right. Life has evolved, and now life is causing technology to occur. You can see it with your own eyes. Technology growing and spreading across the surface of the planet, branching out to the moon and to other places throughout the solar system and beyond. And there is something interesting about this process that humans are caught up in. There is a trend happening. It's clear to see that a natural trajectory of increasing technological sophistication is occurring. Every few years, various technologies will become redundant, replaced with newer generations of sophistication. And it's happening at an increasing rate. Fresh in the minds of the middle-aged and the elderly are outdated technologies that now look primitive and comical to younger generations. But go back 10,000 years and technological change was barely detectable. Imagine yourself being born 10,000 years ago into a hunter and gatherer tribe. The tribe spends most of its days working in the forest, hunting and foraging for food. At night you live in a cave. Life is hard and dangerous for your tribe. Younger members must learn quickly from their elders. The elders teach the young ones how to fashion tools and how to use those primitive technologies according to changes in the seasons. Those same children then grow old and teach the next generation. Generation after generation, knowledge and skills are passed down. If a tribal elder were to die 10,000 years ago, and if that same tribal elder were to come back to life 200 years later, very little would have changed. The tribe would still behave in much the same way. 10 generations might have gone by, but the tribal elder would still see the same methods being used and the same tools being fashioned. Perhaps some slight improvements might have been made here and there, but the tribal elder would still be in position to teach the children all they needed to know about technology. The idea that humanity was part of a great trajectory of increasing technological sophistication would have been nearly undetectable. Yet fast forward 10,000 years to the present day, and the goal for a lot of older people is simply to keep up with the rate of technological change. Technological sophistication is increasing at such an increasing rate that older generations can no longer be relied upon. Teenagers don't run to the elderly for assistance. It's now the other way around. It's not uncommon for a 70-year-old with 70 years of knowledge and life experience to feel dumbfounded by the types of technologies younger generations are using. An expert in any industry from 200 years ago would have no clue about the technologies of the modern world. The growth of technology is clearly on an exponential trajectory. Technological progress is increasing at an increasing rate, and there is nobody at the wheel, no human choosing what is happening. Humans are caught up in a natural process occurring in a region of the universe. The things you see today are simply a brief phase in that process, a process that began billions of years ago when the Earth coalesced from space debris. The conditions were right, and dead matter converted into living matter. Feelings began to grow, happiness appeared, and technology has begun to appear. Humans are only recent arrivals in the process. It just so happened that evolution produced a species that believes in free will. The great irony being that humans are now taking credit for a process whose origins are billions of years in the making. There are no portions of the universe that choose how other portions of the universe should behave. When some phenomenon occurs in some region of the universe, it's always an entirely natural occurrence. The region of the universe that coincides with Earth is no exception to this rule. On Earth, there is currently a trajectory of increasing technological sophistication underway. This is a natural process caused by the collective behavior of humans. But humans are not freely choosing their behavior. Humans are portions of the universe with feelings, and just like all other portions of the universe, there are laws that govern how humans must behave. As already mentioned, the behavior of feeling portions of the universe will generally orientate toward the maximization of happy feelings and generally orientate away from unhappy feelings. The laws that govern human behavior make the avoidance or minimization of unhappiness a self-justifying pursuit. Likewise, those same laws make the maximization of happiness a type of self-justifying pursuit. This means that when humans behave in a way that causes technology to occur, they are behaving in a way that is orientated toward maximizing happiness. And this is reflected in the outcomes of the technology that human behavior causes. There are many specific examples of how that process is unfolding. Look at medical technologies, for example. Take the example of leg amputation. 150 years ago, there was no local or general anesthesia available. It was extremely painful and horrific to watch, and death highly likely due to untreatable infection. It was common for patients to die of the original disease rather than undergo leg amputation. And now, in the present era, local and general anesthesia are available. There are a wide range of synthetic antibiotics available. Prosthetic legs are available in wealthier countries, and advancements in prosthetics allow some patients to run just as fast as those with biological legs. Now, moving 150 years into the future, leg amputation is a very rare procedure due to advances in disease prevention. When it does happen, it's a pain-free procedure, posing no risk to life. And the availability of neuroprosthetics means that patients lose no functionality. In other words, there is no practical difference between a biological leg and a neuroprosthetic leg. Moving further forward to 150,000 years into the future, and leg amputation is a redundant procedure. Humans have bodies immune to injury and disease. Physical pain is not known, but can be experienced for illustrative purposes. Now take the example of telecommunications technologies. Looking, for example, at the way that technologies can be used to communicate with loved ones. 150 years ago, some places in the world had a postal service that provided a delayed means of written communication over long distances. But direct, real-time communication with loved ones required those loved ones to be within earshot. Now, in the present day and age, the majority of the world population has access to a telecommunications device. Depending on location and level of coverage, most people can communicate on a basic level with anyone around the world. Instant communication between loved ones is possible even when separated by long distances. Now moving 150 years into the future, and anyone anywhere in the world can communicate with any other person. No language barriers exist. Communications between Earth and other locations in the solar system are more or less instant. And now, moving to 150,000 years into the future, communication breakdowns do not exist. Subjective experience can be shared with loved ones, and the ability to communicate thoughts and feelings are fully integrated and function as seamlessly as any of the other human senses. Now, turning to pharmaceutical technologies and using mental illness as the example. Travel back 150 years and asylums are scary places. Patients are isolated and lonely. No pharmaceutical treatments are available. These places are often filthy, and straitjackets and bed straps are common items of restraint. Now, in the modern era, mental illnesses, such as schizophrenia and chronic depression, are nearly always medically manageable. Those affected by mental illness are commonly able to function in society and enjoy a quality of life similar to those without mental illness. Looking 150 years into the future, mental illness has become largely preventable. If treatment is required, medications are available that have no adverse side effects, resulting in no detectable difference between those with mental illness and those without. And looking to 150,000 years into the future, there is now no such thing as mental illness. Unhappy mental states no longer exist. And now, looking at lifestyle technologies, and to use human lifespan as the example, 150 years ago, and taking into account infant mortality rates, the average life expectancy in the Americas is only 35 years. In Europe, the average lifespan is 36. And in the Oceania, the average lifespan is 35. There is no data for Africa and Asia, but later figures suggest an average life expectancy of around 25 years. Now, in the current era, the average life expectancy for people in the Americas, Europe, and the Oceania is approaching 80 years. In Asia, the average expectancy is around 75, and in Africa, the average is around 65. Looking to 150 years into the future, and most developing countries are now developed. Nearly all countries around the world have average human life expectancies of between 80 or 100 years. Fast forwarding to 150,000 years into the future, and the concept of life expectancy is gone. Now, of course, the 150,000 year projections just mentioned may appear highly speculative, but there is nothing speculative about the degree of progress that has occurred in the last 150 years. And the exponential nature of that technological progress now underway means that the next 150 years will likely result in far greater progress than the previous 150. In the examples just given, there is a clear correlation between technological progress and increasing forms of happiness, as well as correlation between technology and decreasing forms of unhappiness. It's not uncommon, however, for many people to fail to see the positive correlation between technological progress and happiness. Many people take the opposite point of view. There are people who will feel that technology is actually having a negative impact on humans, and a lot of people might be personally justified in having that view. After all, there is nothing uniform about the human experience. People's lives will always vary, and there will always be some people whose lives have genuinely been negatively impacted by technology, and who by extension apply that experience to the collective experience of humanity. But ultimately, any correlation between technological progress and happiness really has nothing to do with your own life experience. There is no logic in trying to mount an argument on the basis of one's own sentiments about technology. There have simply been too many human lives over time for any one individual life to be relevant in the equation. Measuring the positive correlation between happiness and technological progress demands a much broader perspective. Perhaps it might be argued that the examples given previously were too specific, that the examples are simply cases of cherry-picking specific portions of life where technology has inadvertently had a positive outcome. And it is true that the examples used are quite specific. But this is the nature of examples that rely on short, 150-year windows of time. If you're still not convinced of the correlation between technological progress and increasing happiness, then you need only compare any ordinary portion of modern life to the lives of those who lived in the more distant past. For example, see what conclusions you arrive at when comparing any aspect of your life to the lives of those who lived 11,000 years ago at the end of the Stone Age. It's important to remember that those people who lived 11,000 years ago were feeling portions of the universe just like you. You can't dismiss their feelings as somehow being less than human simply because of the era into which they were born. The intensity and the variety of feelings they were capable of experiencing were no different to the intensity and variety of feelings you're capable of experiencing today. But if you examine what people's lives were like 11,000 years ago, you will start to notice that many of the feelings they experienced are now missing from modern life, and vice versa. And it's nearly always forms of unhappy feelings that are now missing. And in the lives of modern people, there are all sorts of positive feelings that were simply nowhere to be found 11,000 years ago. The examples of this are nearly endless. Take, for example, something as simple as going to bed each night. People have always needed to sleep. But if you go back 11,000 years, you will have to conclude that people slept on the ground. Have you ever slept in an uncomfortable position and woken up sore in the morning? Imagine how it feels to grow old while sleeping every night of your life on dirt or rock or decaying vegetation. It's true that you might get used to waking up sore each morning. Morning soreness might not bother you as much when you have never known anything else. But how would you prefer to exist? Sleeping with or sleeping without a constant but bearable amount of pain? Which is the happier situation to be in? If you have ever had chronic pain, you will understand how much better a pain-free life really is, and how superior it is to sleep on a mattress. And what about the insects that would constantly bite people 11,000 years ago? Have you ever been bothered by mosquitoes while doing something outdoors? Imagine what it's like to sleep out in the open every night of your life, throughout all the seasons. And what about the fear of being eaten alive while you sleep? People no longer go to bed each night experiencing any of these types of feelings. Your home is essentially a fancy cave. The fancy cave that you now live in is fully walled and has doors and windows with fly screens. You can thank technology for those things. The dirty floors of caves have been replaced with a mattress and pillows. Small rivers of crystal clear water flow from the walls of your cave. Cold rivers and hot rivers of water are available whenever you want them. And small suns dot the ceiling of your cave, providing the potential of light 24 hours a day. You have access to fires that heat up your cave while creating no flames or smoke and requiring no preparation or maintenance. Imagine a tribe from 11,000 years ago seeing your fancy cave for the first time. A dirty group of people walking around your home. Imagine what their faces would look like. Their mouths wide open, unable to comprehend the things they are seeing, experiencing one new thing after another. Experiences that were simply impossible to feel 11,000 years ago. So amazed by the luxuriousness of your cave that they might draw no other conclusion than that they had died, and were now walking inside the residence of the creator of the universe. And when they met you, they would marvel at your beautiful skin, a source of wonderment to any Stone Age person that you could have so few scars. Why are there no itchy bite marks all over your body? Where are all the skin infections? Your skin is basically flawless. Perhaps they might think that you are the creator of the universe. And what about the weather tonight? What if there is a forecast of light rain? Are you worried about what's going to happen? When you go to bed and outside it's gently raining, the rain will have no negative impact on your sleep routine, Some people even regard the pitter-patter of raindrops on the roof as soothing. But imagine the nighttime impact of rain 11,000 years ago. There are vast regions of Earth's landmass that don't even have the right geology for caves to form. Have you ever spent a night sleeping under a rainy sky? A Stone Age person might be lucky to find a smooth pad of ground without many pebbles or tree roots. They might then use a stick to scrape the dirt and the dust into a contour that better suits their body shape. But later in the night their bed turns to mud. This is how it always happens. They wake up covered in mud because it's gently raining, and now they're saturated. And then it rains all day the following day. They never get a chance to dry out. And the temperature is colder than usual. They lay down on a wet ground the following night, and the rain continues for a week. But there is no time for sulking or mental fatigue. Nobody is going to deliver your food to you. You must forge on. This is what daily life is like. Waking up sore and itchy, and wet and dirty, are not valid excuses for missing a day's work in the tribe. Going to bed 11,000 years ago was a constant source of pain and discomfort. No fancy caves, no waterproof roofs, no mattresses, no fly screens. People 11,000 years ago had so many nighttime experiences which, as a result of technology, are now missing from the everyday experience of modern life. And technology has brought with it a range of new feelings. The sensation of a pillow under your head, the feeling of clean, dry linen, switching on a light, turning on warm water. These are the types of feelings that once upon a time no human had ever felt. Now, take walking as another example. The simple process of moving around on your feet from one location to another. Suppose you're sitting in the lounge room and you need to use the bathroom. You simply stand up and you walk through your fancy cave into the bathroom, and that's all there is to it. But 11,000 years ago, people lived in the wilderness. No one had ever experienced the sensation of sitting on a lounge or using a bathroom. No one had ever even experienced the sensation of walking on a level surface, with the exception of frozen ice. There was no such thing as a tiled floor, or polished timber floorboards, or carpet, or concrete. Despite the constant walking required of Stone Age people, there was no such thing as a modern pair of shoes. Walking could be disastrous 11,000 years ago. Being barefoot in the wilderness now seems like a silly thing to do. But that's how walking was once done. There were no other options. One wrong step and you could end up with a cut on your foot. Taking 10 steps could quite literally result in 10 cuts if you were not careful about it. And those cuts will easily become infected when you then have to continue walking around in the wilderness with no shoes on. The real question is whether an infection will spread. If it does spread, then you will probably die in a painful way. There was no way of stopping sepsis 11,000 years ago. But in the modern era, people no longer need to walk with a sense of trepidation hanging over them. These days, people will walk from a lounge room to a bathroom without any fear at all. Nearly everywhere a modern human walks, they will walk in a totally carefree manner. No pressure to stay steady on your feet. No need to pick your steps carefully. And even if you do fall over, and even if you do happen to cut yourself, there is no need to worry about what lies ahead. Simply dress the wound and you'll minimize your risk of infection. If it does get infected, then that's not a problem either. Just take a short course of antibiotics. And now look at how sex has changed over time. Modern-day sex between a heterosexual couple will be almost unrecognizable to someone 11,000 years ago. Today, sex is an innocent, pleasurable, and intimate activity. But sex was once a dangerous thing to do. If a man ejaculated in a woman, then there was about a 1 in 20 chance she would be dead within a year. Childbirth carried a fatality rate of around 5%. Do you think that your distant grandparents from 11,000 years ago were capable of the types of passionate love that lovers feel in the modern era? Could a man look his lover in the eyes at the moment he ejaculated in her? Being in love with a woman and ejaculating in her is incompatible with modern-day concepts of love. In the modern era, undertaking any activity that puts someone at a 5% risk of death would be treated as an act of criminal culpability and not regarded as something innocent, intimate, or beautiful. And when the sex is over, you can't undo what has been done. A couple from 11,000 years ago must then live with the reality that there is now a reasonable chance their relationship will end in 9 months. Quite possibly one of them will be dead. And then repeat the process again, of course. If childbirth is a success, then there's another ejaculation, and another 1 in 20 chance of death. Repeat and repeat, increasing the odds that a man will kill the woman he apparently loves. But none of this exists anymore. These sorts of emotions are now missing. Technology has eradicated them. Try to apply the same emotions to your current life. Would you engage in an activity with your lover, or even your worst enemy, if it meant a 1 in 20 chance that they would die in less than a year? Would you let your lover on a plane if there were a 1 in 20 chance of it crashing? Imagine how scared you would feel to know that the love of your life had a 1 in 20 chance of being dead in just 9 months. Think of how those feelings would hang over the everyday lives of a couple. A feeling being constantly reinforced by witnessing the deaths of the women around you. Imagine, 11,000 years ago, just how ugly those deaths were that resulted from sex. Women sprawled out on the dirt, abdomen sliced open with sharp rocks, organs bare to the sky. No pain relief available. Women screaming as rocks sliced open their wombs. Mothers knowing that they will never get to see their children grow up, but being in too much pain to pay any attention to their newborn babies. Too much pain to feel any loving emotions. Or maybe the baby will be sacrificed for the sake of the mother. And if the baby won't come out, then it will just need to come out by force. But what tools do you have available 11,000 years ago? Fetch a strong stick and an ergonomic rock. Tell the mother to stop screaming and stay still. The baby's head is stuck. The only option is to crack it open like an eggshell, banging on it repeatedly until its head turns to mush. A fact of life 11,000 years ago, the living babies will sometimes come out in broken pieces. Sometimes the baby will come out crying with arms and legs detached. Sometimes the extraction will result in a healthy baby with nothing attached to its neck, just a mashed up face. Communities 11,000 years ago did not feel the way that communities feel today. These were places where teenage girls often died not long after their first period. A place where 30% of the children had painful deaths by the age of 5, and 60% were gone by the age of 10. The mothers whose childbirths were successful were forced by nature to love their children, while also living under the torment of children regularly dying around them. Powerless mothers and powerless fathers who wondered when it might be their turn to mourn the loss of a child, something that nearly always happened to parents who had 2 or more kids. And what was it like to be a man back then? Men ravaged by self-loathing. A guilty form of existence where men would kill their lovers on a regular basis. The statistics paint a painful story. These were men who might kill one lover and then move on to another. Statistically, some of them would ejaculate a second time and kill the second love of their life, leaving a trail of death behind each time a man did what nature required him to do. This was not a happy place. These people suffered feelings that technology doesn't allow you to feel anymore. Sex was a terrifying necessity of life 11,000 years ago. In the modern world, a couple can slowly fall in love amid the softness of a fancy cave, and a courtship that can be littered with beautiful moments of sexual intimacy. The ability to lie on a soft mattress and stare each other in the eyes without the guilt or the prospect of terror. Having sex in the morning and then off to a cafe for brunch. A near-zero risk of death within a year. No hideous outcomes. Nobody dying with organs open to the sky. Perhaps the coffee is not hot enough, or the waiter was a jerk, or you overheard the politics of someone nearby, and you felt deeply offended. It's easy to be short-sighted, to be a chronic pessimist, for each small improvement to go unnoticed, and the pain of history to be forgotten. To hold on to the idea that technological progress has brought a bad situation upon the world. That technology is making the human experience worse and worse over time. But if you are one of these people, then step back and look at the long-term trajectory, for the examples are endless. Right now, at this very moment, technology is doing so much in order to keep those terrible Stone Age feelings at bay. In your corner of the universe, there is a natural phenomenon underway. Billions of years ago, the conditions were just right for inanimate matter to come to life. Over a long period of time, life evolved and became more complex. Portions of the universe gained feelings, and now there are portions of the universe with human feelings. And when this happens, there are scientific laws that determine how feeling portions of the universe, like any other portion of the universe, must behave. Those laws cause human behavior to generally orientate toward maximizing happiness. If the conditions continue to be right, then this type of happiness-orientated behavior will cause happiness-orientated technology to occur. In other words, technology will occur that generally facilitates and contributes to the maximizing of happiness. And if the conditions remain just right, then a phenomenon of increasing technological sophistication will occur, and this will therefore coincide with a trajectory of increasing happiness. With sufficient time, and if the conditions remain right, these two trajectories will continue until they cannot continue any further. In a finite universe governed by laws, technological progress cannot continue infinitely. Likewise, in a finite universe governed by laws, a trajectory of increasing happiness cannot be infinite. These two trajectories must have theoretical endpoints. Two questions immediately arise. Firstly, what are the chances of these trajectories reaching their endpoints? And secondly, if those endpoints were reached, what would it look like? In order to answer the first question, it's important to identify those phenomena that could feasibly stop the current trajectories from reaching their natural endpoints. One of the crucial elements here is time. The trajectories cannot reach their natural conclusions without a sufficient amount of time in which to get there. However, this does not appear to be a problem. There are no known time constraints being imposed on the current trajectories. The universe as a whole is in its infancy. The sun won't be going anywhere for billions of years, and the Milky Way galaxy will be stable for even longer than that. And nor are there any resource constraints. The greater the technological advancement, the more efficient and more widely available resource extraction becomes. The resources of the entire solar system are available if required. The only weak point in this picture appears to be the humans themselves. Humans are a necessary component of technological progress. Likewise, if humans were to go extinct, then the trajectory of increasing happiness would come to a halt. And so it becomes relevant to examine the list of plausible threats to the survival of humanity. An impact event. An asteroid with a diameter of at least 3 miles could cause human extinction. Current evidence suggests that over the past 600 million years, Earth has been impacted by 60 objects that fall within this size category. A supervolcano. Supervolcanoes generally erupt less than once every 50,000 years. There are 2 supervolcanoes known to have occurred throughout human history. One occurred in Indonesia 73,000 years ago. The other occurred in New Zealand 26,500 years ago. Larger eruptions have occurred in the past, and the resulting volcanic winter could pose a risk to human survival. Disease outbreak. A pandemic with no known cure and a 100% human fatality rate could theoretically occur. Warfare or mishap. A war of sufficient scale could result in a nuclear winter that would alter the world's climate patterns and have an impact on agricultural production. Likewise, a biological or technological accident could also present an existential risk to humanity. A gamma-ray burst. Gamma-ray bursts are energetic explosions that can originate from supernovae. These bursts occur a few times in the galaxy per million years. A gamma-ray burst in the galactic neighborhood could potentially destroy the Earth's ozone layer, exposing Earth's life forms to the full effects of the sun's ultraviolet rays. Now, you will notice that the various forms of plausible extinction events all share one thing in common. They all happen relatively infrequently, and this is borne out by history. There are 5 known major extinction events. The Ordovician Silurian extinction event, which occurred around 445 million years ago. The Late Devonian extinction event, which occurred around 368 million years ago. The Permian Triassic extinction event, which occurred around 252 million years ago. The Triassic Jurassic extinction event, which occurred 201.3 million years ago. And the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction event, which occurred 66 million years ago. These extinction events and the events that triggered them are separated by tens of millions of years. They simply don't occur with any frequency. Yet, look at what happens if you fast forward just a few hundred years into the future. Pretend for a moment you're 300 years from now, a minuscule period of time compared to the types of timescales on which extinction events occur, and suppose an asteroid does impact the Earth. And suppose the impact event is so significant that it literally causes every human on the planet to die. Would humans therefore go extinct? Interestingly, the answer to that question is no. The trajectory of technological progress now underway means that in 300 years humans will have self-sustaining colonies on the Moon and Mars. Humans will likely have highly sophisticated colonies on nearby asteroids as well as the moons of other planets. Right now the International Space Station is orbiting Earth. But in 300 years there will likely be multiple space stations orbiting not just Earth, but other bodies in the solar system too. Space tourism and space commercialization will likely mean a number of spacecraft traveling through various regions of the solar system at any given time. This means that the passing of a few more hundred years will render humans immune to extinction from asteroid impacts. Or in other words, the trajectories of increasing technological sophistication and increasing happiness will soon be immune to asteroid impact. Likewise, in just a few hundred years humanity will be immune to the most severe supervolcano imaginable. It does not matter how massive a volcano is, or how badly it subsequently disrupts the Earth's climate. Humans will not go extinct given that not all humans will be reliant on Earth's climate for survival. The same immunity also applies against all the other plausible causes of human extinction. Take the example of a lethal pandemic. Viruses and bacteria can spread with relative ease around the planet's biosphere, but the planet is surrounded by the inhospitable vacuum of space. An out-of-control pandemic with a 100% fatality rate, however unlikely that might realistically be, can easily be prevented from spreading to other planets, to other moons, asteroids, spacecraft, space stations, and so on. The same is true of any type of biological warfare or mishap. And the same also applies to nuclear warfare. Any type of nuclear winter resulting from a nuclear war will have zero climatic impact on those populations who live in locations elsewhere in the solar system. Similarly, humanity would also be immune to the threat of a gamma-ray burst. In 300 years, a portion of the population will no longer be reliant on the Earth's ozone layer for protection from the sun's ultraviolet rays. Those humans who do not reside on Earth will out of necessity already have technological ozone substitutes in order to combat the constant bombardment of radiation they receive. An interesting moment in time is fast approaching. In just a few hundred years, it will be more or less impossible to eradicate humans. A threshold will soon occur beyond which no natural force will be able to stop humans. And if you can't stop humans, then you can't stop the behavior that they're not choosing to do. And this means you can't stop the trajectories of increasing technological progress and increasing happiness from continuing until they inevitably reach some sort of natural endpoint. The second question then arises: if the trajectories of increasing progress and increasing happiness continue unabated, then what will the endpoints of those two trajectories look like? At first glance, it may appear that the endpoint of technological progress occurs at the moment when progress cannot continue any further. That humans are racing toward an inevitable moment when all the scientific laws of the universe are understood and are capable of being harnessed. A moment in time when all possible technology is available. However, this sort of scenario does not make a lot of sense, and that's because you need to look at what is causing the trajectory of technological progress to occur in the first place. The cause is human behavior. But human behavior is not orientated toward greater, better, and ever more sophisticated forms of technology. Human behavior is instead orientated toward the maximizing of happiness. And technology is simply a means to facilitate and contribute to the maximizing of happiness. The endpoint of a trajectory of increasing technological sophistication is not maximally sophisticated technology. Rather, the endpoint is whatever technologies are required in order to reach a state of maximum happiness. And maximum happiness need not require maximum technological sophistication. Once a maximum state of happiness is realized, and there can be no greater happiness, then the behavior of humans will no longer orientate toward technological progress. If further technological sophistication were pursued for the happiness that such a pursuit brought, then a state of maximum happiness must not have been realized in the first place. Therefore, the endpoint of the current trajectories is a state of maximum happiness and not maximum technological sophistication. Maximum happiness is a natural phenomenon that occurs in any region of the universe where the conditions are right for a trajectory of increasing happiness to occur, and where the conditions permit that trajectory to continue to its endpoint. The natural process by which maximum happiness forms is no different to the process by which any other phenomenon throughout the universe forms. For example, a loose comparison can be drawn between the formation of a star and the formation of maximum happiness, each phenomenon having its own threshold of no return. The formation of a star begins when the conditions are right for a giant molecular cloud to occur. A supernova explosion impacts that giant molecular cloud. A threshold is reached in the mass of the cloud's gravity that triggers an unstoppable collapse of the molecular cloud. This leads to the formation of a star. And now, the formation of maximum happiness begins when the conditions are right for happy feelings to occur. Those feeling portions of the universe cause technology to occur. A threshold is reached in technological sophistication that triggers an unstoppable trajectory of increasing happiness. This leads to the formation of maximum happiness. In just a few hundred years, a threshold will occur. This will mark the moment in time when no known force will be able to stop the current trajectory of technological progress, and a state of maximum happiness will inevitably form. The prospect of this not occurring is extremely low, due to the short length of time before the threshold is due to occur relative to the infrequency in the occurrence of extinction events. A few crude calculations can be used to demonstrate this point. For example, 5 major extinction events have occurred in the last 445 million years. If you exclude any human-caused extinction event from the calculation, then this equates to an average of around 1 major extinction event for every 89 million years. If the threshold is only 300 years away, then the odds of an extinction event occurring between now and then is roughly 1 in 297,000. That equates to a probability of around 0.00034%. In other words, there is a 99.99966% chance of the threshold occurring, and therefore a 99.99966% chance of the current trajectory of increasing happiness continuing toward its natural conclusion, being the point at which happiness cannot increase any further. Humans are portions of the universe that are orientated toward maximizing happiness, but humans don't choose the reasons behind the moments that make them feel happy. The happiest moments of a person's life are unchosen. There are of course clear correlations between happiness and the biological needs that ensure the survival of the species. For example, positive feelings coincide with eating when hungry and drinking when thirsty. Happy feelings are a type of reward system that evolution has exploited, and modern humans then extend upon that reward system. For example, by going out to restaurants, by cooking up new recipes, by traveling to foreign places to sample new flavors, and so on. But what about the game of golf? What about someone who enjoys reading history books about steam engines? What about the person who wanders around the forest hoping to catalog a new species of snail? Evolution rewards humans for doing things that are good for their survival, but in many cases happiness also coincides with behaviors that seem to have very little relationship with the fitness of the species. Who would have thought that hitting a golf ball into a hole, and then removing it from the hole, and then repeating that process over and over would be a source of happiness for so many portions of the universe? In fact, if a professional golfer were to win a major golf championship, then that might be one of the happiest days in that golfer's life. But whether happiness coincides with some biological need, or whether it coincides with any other type of behavior, in all cases humans are not freely choosing what makes them feel happy. And this is the crucial gateway by which extreme forms of happiness are possible along a trajectory of increasing happiness. For example, if the golfer is not choosing why they experience so much happiness when winning a major golf championship, then why can't that same golfer experience a championship-winning level of happiness simply by walking out onto the golf course each morning? You might argue that this sort of happiness would lack substance, that there can't be any sense of championship-winning happiness if there is no sense of achievement for the golfer. But this sort of argument relies on an assumption that golfers have chosen the reasons why golf makes them feel happy in the first place. Given that there is a trajectory of increasing technological sophistication underway, and given that the maximizing of happiness motivates that trajectory, it's possible that future technologies will one day exploit the lack of free will behind happiness. A technological future may mean that the golfer walks out onto the golf course every morning with a championship-winning feeling of happiness. And each and every morning that championship-winning feeling remains fresh and rich in substance and equally as intense as what it would really feel like for the golfer to win a major championship. This sort of scenario might seem ridiculous to you, but that's only because you believe in free will, and you genuinely feel that people choose the reasons behind the things that make them happy. But your lack of actual free will means that the opposite is true. And this makes the previous scenario of lots of extremely happy golfers a real possibility on a trajectory of technological progress that is being motivated by the maximization of happiness. The current location of humanity means that extreme states of happiness are not something that present-day humans can experience. In much the same way that a person from 11,000 years ago missed out on so many of the positive feelings that you now feel, so you're missing out on so many of the extremely positive feelings that someone in the distant future will feel. Have you ever noticed, for example, that there appears to be no ceiling to your happiest moments? Today, even when a person experiences the happiest moments of their life, they do not reach a state of maximum happiness. There is no point at which it becomes impossible to feel any happier. Take, for example, the types of mind training that some people practice in order to induce positive feelings. If you're someone who has done this, then you will notice that your states of well-being appear to have no upper limit. It's always possible to get slightly better at inducing states of happiness that are themselves increasingly richer, more well-rounded, and longer-lasting. But you'll also notice that there are functional limitations on your happiness. For example, an intense feeling of well-being, fulfillment, or euphoria makes it nearly impossible to multitask. How well do you think you would perform on a mathematics exam while in a state of euphoria? The brain simply has a limit on how much it can process at once. And everyone knows that those intense types of happiness don't last forever. Inevitably, the chemicals run dry and the brain returns to a more baseline state of feeling. But this need not be the case in the future. Take, for example, a future in which happy moments don't come and go. Suppose instead that your brain is augmented by technology and there is no such thing as chemicals running dry. As you move through life, you might then keep the feeling of past happy moments with you. Your happy moments stack up on top of one another, and the positive feelings associated with each happy memory never diminish. You always feel the happiness of those past moments with the same richness as when you first experienced them. By the time you're an adult, you might have accumulated thousands of nuanced forms of happiness. An elderly person might experience tens of thousands of accumulated happy memories all at once, all of the time. A type of snowballing effect taking place as the feelings from past happy moments infect your everyday life. Waking up each morning knowing that your day can't be less happy than the previous, and in all likelihood will be even happier than any other day of your life. But even in this scenario, there is no ceiling to happiness. This scenario still does not represent a maximum state of happiness. Your happiness is still contingent on the events of your life, and some people will naturally be happier than others. And everyone will always have the ability to be slightly more happy than they presently are. You could therefore stretch the scenario even further. Why should there be any obligation to wait for happy moments? If the reasons that make a person happy are not freely chosen, then intense feelings of happiness could coincide with any situation in life. Perhaps it might be argued that being happy all the time would inevitably get boring. The monotony of happiness would eventually turn hellish. But there's a contradiction within that kind of argument. How can a person be happy all the time and at the same time get bored? Being bored is not a form of happiness. If you are able to feel bored some of the time, then things are not by definition causing you to feel happy all the time. These speculations about how happiness might work in the future bring, if nothing else, some sense of scale to the situation. Consider the idea that the average life of someone alive today might attract a happiness score of 5. And a score of 5 might equate to a remarkably rare and happy life for a Stone Age person in their constant battle against death and discomfort. And maybe the happiest human who has ever lived to date has had a life that would attract a happiness score of 10. But a score of 10 might barely register on a scale that could go up to 100 or more. Perhaps maximum happiness equates to a score of 100,000. When speculating on how forms of extreme happiness might manifest along a trajectory of increasing happiness, it's hard to overlook a logical problem that will inevitably crop up in the distant future. At some point along the trajectory, as it heads toward its endpoint, you are going to start to become relevant. In order to understand why you're going to become relevant in the future, you firstly need to step back and look at what you are. In the most literal sense, you're a portion of the universe that has the feeling of what it feels like to be you. But the feeling of you is just one of many feeling portions of the universe. You belong to a region of the universe where there are a wide variety of feeling portions, of which you are just one example. Now take a look at the various feelings that make up the sum of your own experience. Say, for example, you enjoy taking walks in a particular park near your home. This means that one component of your overall feelings is the feeling of walking in the park. Similarly, the feeling of how it feels to be you is only one component of the total feelings for a particular region of the universe. Just as going for a walk in a particular park carries a unique feeling for you, so too are you a unique feeling for a region of the universe. There are no other feelings the same as you, and when you die, the feeling of walking in the park will disappear. The universe will no longer have the experience of walking in the park. And if the current trajectory of increasing happiness continues beyond the threshold, leading to an inevitable state of maximum happiness, then the feeling of you will be missing. Maximally happy walks at the beach may exist, but maximally happy walks in the park will not. You will be dead. But look at what would happen if it were technologically possible to recreate walks in the park. The endpoint of any trajectory that has reached a state of maximum happiness would therefore actually be a state of maximum happiness plus the potential to create the feeling of maximally happy walks in the park. But this is a contradiction. By definition, you can't have a state of maximum happiness to which a greater amount of happiness can be added. This instead refers to a state of less than maximum happiness. It would simply mean that the trajectory hadn't actually reached a state of maximum happiness yet. The actual endpoint of the current trajectory would not occur until the potential to create maximally happy walks in the park had been realized. The relevant question that needs to be answered is whether or not it will become possible, along a trajectory of increasing technological sophistication, to recreate the feeling of walks in the park. That is, to recreate the unique feeling of what it feels like to feel like you. And in order to answer this question, it's relevant to look at where the feeling of you actually came from. Or more generally, to look at where all known feelings come from. Fundamentally, you're a portion of the universe that feels like you. But billions of years ago, there were no known portions of the Earth that had feelings. Billions of years later, the Earth now comprises many feeling portions, and the cause of all those feelings is natural evolution. To date, evolution is the only known means by which portions of the universe can develop the type of feelings that you're experiencing right now. But there is nothing supernatural about evolution. And this is where things start to get interesting. Evolution is a natural, scientifically explainable process. There is no evidence of a God having anything to do with it. On the contrary, evolution is an entirely random, trial and error process governed by scientific laws that appear totally indifferent to the success or failure of any particular species. This is a fortunate situation, because it means that on a trajectory of increasing technological sophistication, a day must inevitably arrive when science will be able to explain how evolution has caused portions of the universe to develop feelings. At some point in the future, scientists will be able to technologically replicate the evolutionary process. It might take hundreds of years, or perhaps it will take thousands of years, but you and other animals like you cannot elude scientific explanation forever. And the fact that the feeling of you already exists, and the fact that your existence has come about by the haphazard, trial and error process of evolution, suggests that the recreation of the feeling of you is probably nowhere near as complex as you may think it is. Any attempt to argue that the feeling of you cannot, in principle, be recreated necessarily relies on the idea that you are wholly or partly above the laws of science. Right now, there is a portion of the Milky Way galaxy that is feeling exactly the same as you are feeling. That portion of the galaxy has no choice other than to operate in the way that it does. No choice other than to feel the way it's feeling right now. That portion of the Milky Way galaxy is everything that is you, and there is nothing unscientific about that portion of the galaxy. You're simply a piece of the universe arranged in a specific way. And if you take the same ingredients, under the same conditions, governed by the same laws, applied to the same universe, then the outcome will be the same every time. The feeling of you will appear. You're a type of formula, and if that formula is repeated, then the outcome will be everything that currently makes you feel the way that you feel. To claim that it's impossible to recreate the feeling of you is to claim that you are somehow a one-stop possibility. That you are so special that the laws of science can only create you once, and then forevermore, those same laws applied in the same way, somehow lose their ability to function properly, no longer capable of doing what they have already done. That when you die, the laws of science will be forever changed. For billions and billions of years to come, the laws of the universe will be slightly broken as a result of the death of a single human. The reality is that you never chose how it feels to feel like you. That feeling that you lay claim to, that feeling that you're feeling right now, the one you know so well, you never chose it. Right now, don't be fooled. That's a portion of the universe that you are feeling. And any future portion of the universe that has the identical formula will have no choice other than to feel everything that you're currently feeling. And that's because, on no theoretical level, can it feel any different than what you're now feeling. As soon as the formula is recreated, everything that is you reappears. The feeling of you comes back. No choice in the matter, just as you have no choice in the matter right now. These can be difficult ideas to come to terms with. The problem is that humans are nowhere near as special as they think they are. And it's no surprise that humans should think themselves special. It's no surprise that most people are religious and will readily believe that the entire universe was created just for their species. That the God of the entire universe is interested in the details of their lives. The strong sense in which people feel more special than they really are can be blamed on evolution. Humans are the result of billions of years of evolution, in which feeling special was advantageous for survival. The more special an animal feels, the greater its sense of self-importance, and the greater it strives to preserve itself when times are tough. But objectively, there is nothing more special about a human than any other portion of the universe. By what objective measure can one portion of the universe be more special than another? Evolution is a process by which collections of atoms undergo a conversion process. Dead atoms go in one end, and out the other end come atoms that feel more special than their fellow atoms. Look at how special you feel by comparison to your fellow portions of the universe. Look at how infinitely more special you feel by comparison to the dirt under your feet or the air that you breathe. People are regular portions of the universe, governed by the same laws that govern all the other regions of the universe. On an unstoppable trajectory of increasing technological sophistication, a day will always arrive when it becomes possible for science to recreate the formula of you, and thereby the feeling of you. The feeling of you can be understood by analogy. You could say that there are three ways in which the feeling of you can exist. 1, no feeling at all. For example, you are not born yet, or you are dead. 2, less than maximally happy. For example, your current state of being. Or 3, maximally happy, which occurs at the endpoint of the current trajectory. You could say that when you're not alive, the feeling of you is switched off. When you are alive, but less than maximally happy, the feeling of you is switched to dim. And when the feeling of you is in a state of maximum happiness, you are switched to bright. The trajectory toward a state of maximum happiness will at some point in the future inevitably require the feeling of you to be switched to bright. This switching you on process probably sounds more mysterious and complicated than it really will be. One day the science of feelings will be a basic science, no different to any other branch of science. And possibly the technological process of switching the feeling of you to bright will be a simple process and will presumably utilize the same process by which evolution has enabled you to be switched on as you are right now. It need not involve switching you and every other individual back on, one by one, person by person. Rather, there can only be a finite number of feelings that can possibly exist in a finite system. And so it's more likely that as soon as science figures out how to switch feelings to bright, that all possible feelings will be switched to bright all at once. And this is what maximum happiness means. Mainstream science says that the universe began billions of years ago with the Big Bang, after which the universe began to expand. In the minutes after the Big Bang, the universe was little more than a hot soup of expanding plasma. The entire contents of the universe were so dense and so hot that it was not even possible for atoms to form. Fast forward billions of years, and now you exist. There is literally a portion of the universe that is able to see and hear. A portion of the universe exists that is feeling all the thoughts and all the emotions that you are currently feeling. A portion of the universe is feeling how it feels to be you, precisely because there is a portion of the universe that is you. And likewise, there are now regions of the universe where feelings are orientated toward the maximization of happiness. And if you search around the universe, and if you visit a region where the conditions are just right, you will even find naturally occurring technology. The atheist believes that there is no need to involve a god, or anything else supernatural, in the explanation of how the universe behaves. The atheist finds it believable that with sufficient time, a universe composed of boiling hot plasma can naturally convert into eyes and ears, allowing the universe to be seen and heard. And the atheist believes that with sufficient time, boiling hot plasma can naturally develop feelings such as pain, humor, nostalgia, happiness. And likewise, the atheist finds it believable that the universe, with sufficient time, will naturally develop feeling portions that seek to maximize happiness and avoid, or at least seek to minimize, feelings of unhappiness. And the atheist believes that, with sufficient time, in those regions of the universe where the conditions are just right, the universe will grow trajectories of increasing technological sophistication, as is happening right now in your current corner of the universe. And now, the atheist is being asked to believe something else, a minor logical extension of everything else that the atheist already believes. The really bizarre stuff has already happened, and this, by comparison, is rather dull. But the atheist already believes that with sufficient time, the laws of science can turn hot plasma into a giggling child, whereas now the evidence is requiring the atheist to believe that the laws of science can create a happier version of the same child. How do you know that the universe is billions of years old? Before you respond, try to look at things from a different point of view. Your ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years, generation after generation, never had any idea how old the universe might be. They had no means of finding out. And you would not know either, except that modern science tells you the answer. You need to rely on science because you were not born instinctively knowing how old the universe is. Throughout your life you have never had any sense of all the billions of years that passed by prior to your existence. Have you ever had a surgical operation that required general anesthesia? One moment you're awake. The next moment you're waking up. The surgery has finished. The anesthesia is wearing off. An hour went by in the blink of an eye. But how would you know an hour had gone by unless you had some external proof? Instead of an hour, the same surgery could have lasted 24 hours. In the blink of an eye, a whole day could have gone by. 1 hour or 1 day, and your experience would feel identical. Waiting 24 hours to be born, or waiting billions of years to be born, your experience in both cases is the same. You're lucky to be the type of thing that you are. Your death is going to place you in a fortunate position. The moment you die, your arms will open to literally any point in the future timeline of the universe. 100 years or 1 billion years, all just the blink of an eye away. Something interesting is happening in your corner of the universe. The dial is turned in favor of happiness, and a natural trajectory is currently underway. A trajectory that will continue in your absence. You will be dead. Your feelings will be switched off again, but the technological progress will not stop. And a threshold will soon be reached, making the endpoint of that trajectory an inevitable outcome. A moment after you die, your eyes will reopen. A blink of an eye, and thousands of years will have passed. The endpoint of the trajectory has finally arrived. Everyone will be there, happier than you have ever seen them,